Why, hello there. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, my name is Mr. Doggo333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, The New Order as Brazil. Now, last time we were together, the 100 Days Crisis kicked off to full effect, so we are currently working on securing the position for Mr. Adhemar. In the meanwhile, we secured the Paraguayan front, mainly through cheats. Pretty much exclusively through cheats, actually, not even lying. And right now, Bolivia is invading Santa Cruz over here. Beautiful city. I haven't been to this one. I've been to the one in California. Recently, even. Wonderful. Would recommend. No culture. Look at that. But I meander a little bit. This place is about to get wiped off the fucking map. In the meanwhile, we're just kind of continuing on with 100 Days Crisis. South Africa is going okay. Adhemar has about a third of the support, which is pretty above anyone else. Notably above it, I should say. And it's time to get going on this. I'm not going to do this anymore, just because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there is a branch of the military that emerges once the PSB takes charge. So we'll see. Lot's brow furrowed like ice-flecked trenches as he murmured to the marshal on the other end of the line. Why, in God's fucking name, did you veto our ally, Denise? The reply came hoarsely, ponderously. If communists made such good allies, then why don't you all book Harren from the grave? He'd be happy to bury another country. Or lucky that there's still one Brazil, any longer under Goulart, and it'd shatter into 20. Throw your life away, then! We spent our whole careers fighting for a constitution, and you just ruined it! Do you have any idea how you're going to restore at least some of the good we've done? I'm listening. Please tell me how. Lot clutched the telephone by his gray steeled face. His palms covered his teeth, shifting whetstones grit together. Withdraw your veto and support Goulart, who was elected president according to our constitution, the one you fought for. I'm listening. Look, if you're worried about communists, you'll galvanize the entire left by going through with this. It won't end there. Any integralist left in the military will look at this and see the greatest opportunity they've ever had to wretch his country the way of Italy, and it'll be because of you. I'm listening. Lot slammed the handset on the receiver, and a curt ring resounded in his house. He had listened attentively to silence. To ruin my life's work like that. I feel bad. Lot is a homie, friend of the channel. Seeing him go like that, not fun. Organization of Dutch Realm. Let's secure some more support. Got 35% support. Liberals elected in Colombia. We'll see how well that goes for them, won't we? You called him a socialist in the article. Are you sure that's what the officers want to hear? What's most important is that Goulart gets support. It's what he is, and not calling him that isn't going to fool him into thinking that he isn't one. Could you please put me live? He nodded and flicked a switch downward. Lot brought his face to the microphone and waited for the host's finger to drop. Even outside the booth, the station was silent. Only Lot and the host remained. Lot was anxious and constantly thinking of the running sedan outside. The count hit 1 and he cleared his throat. People of Brazil, I am Henrique Teixeira Lot, former President of the Republic and Commander-in-Chief of the Brazilian Armed Forces. I speak today united with you all as a victim of a new tyranny in an old and familiar tire, and I say that Lacerda's rank of suited military men should not govern the Republic in your name. João Goulart, regardless of the ideological difference between him and I, is the rightful elected president of Brazil. Our nation is in danger, and if we are to ever speak or vote our minds again without a man with a rifle watching over us, we must all resist this newest face of tyranny. Failing this, our nation... The lights cut out and the radio with it. The booth and the studio adjacent were lit only by the harsh red glow of buzzing LED lamps. Quicker than he had ever thought he could, Lot flung himself into the driver's seat of his weary beige sedan and drove him home. Couldn't stop him from hearing some of it, Lacerda. Goulart already lost track of how many days it had been since the Senado was thrown into chaos. He and his staff had been forced into constantly watch their backs and remain consistently paranoid that the police, potential plainclothes military officers, were rumored to be on patrol for Goulart and the rest of the PTB. And it was clearly taking a toll on his wife, Maria. It was good that he still enjoyed significant popularity throughout the city of Porto Alegre, but Goulart was still immensely nervous before the meeting with the Admiral Arago he was walking into. He couldn't shake the possibility of an ambush or being kidnapped at the meeting. What if the note had come from someone pretending to be Arago? Goulart pushed open the door to toilet back room of the bar. He saw that the Admiral was sitting at a dusty table with a cigarette in his hand. As he approached the table, Admiral Arago immediately stood out of his seat and went over to give an enthusiastic handshake to the VP of the Republic. Django! I didn't think you would end up coming. The Admiral cracked a large smile. Goulart himself felt inspired by the energy Arago showed. Time short, Arago, but if you have something to say, it must be important. Bring me the bad news. Bad news? Well, I'm sure this whole situation is very nerve-wracking for you, but I'm here to bring you good news, Django. Listen, as you know, significant parts of the military are out to get you, but I still know a couple of people in the armed forces that are sympathetic to your cause. I need you to trust me with something, Arago said, staring straight into Goulart's eyes. What is it, Admiral? I need your itinerary during the crisis. My men have boats throughout the coast and helicopters on call at certain bases. If the worst happens and you're caught, my men may be able to rescue you. But we need to know where you are in order to pull something like that off. Goulart thought for just a second. There's surely a massive risk, but there was no clear way into the presidency without taking any. After a second, Goulart smiled back and told Arago, Of course, Admiral. I owe you a massive debt. Goulart here has main character energy, which it's unfortunate that we can't explore this anymore. But what are you going to do? Should probably check this guy out in the meanwhile, because I haven't checked out. Reneer Misili. A veteran, Misili fought in this constitutionalist war against Vargas in 1932 and later had his first federal level position in 1942 as Director of National Public Treasury. After democratization, he was elected as a federal deputy by the PSC in 1950 and has been re-elected well into Vlad's administration. Now the country in crisis, Misili is entrusted as Brazil's head of government under André, being harmless, he poses no threat to democracy, nor will he be its great savior. Instead, he simply spends his days hoping that maybe, by not looking at the problem, things might just go away. Alright, let's secure support. As I say, Jose, with all due respect, there is nothing here to worry about, insisted Alfredo Ramos, sipping from a cup of coffee on the table, his legs crossed. Hobin pursed his lips, watching a frantic administrator scuttle past his guest. I mean, seriously, the preparations are all done. I've spoken with the Americans and your own military. It's all going to work. We are going to win. Tell me if I'm missing something, Hobin said suddenly, looking out the window. The streets were as chaotic as the corridors in here, he thought. You will send a signal tonight for soldier defectors and police to break in through the communist lines, arrest the foreign leadership, and that's it? No, my friend. We'll break through the communist lines, arrest the foreign leadership, and fan out across the city and take the checkpoints. It's all been done before. This isn't the first time the military is taking control like this, Pepe. You now see the armed guards in the embassy unloading crates with weapons from down below as you look down. But even then, you're forgetting something. What about Rafael Franco? Do you think his people will just give up that easily? After all this time? The Paraguayan's airy smile faded slightly. Franco will come along. He will realize how strong his hand is and accept he can cooperate or be swept away. He took another sip and smiled. Obim couldn't help but look away, a stern frown on his face. The man was playing poker on the future of his country, and with the most confident poker face to boot. But by God, he better have reason to be. If not, the ringing of the aftershock would not end for years. The die is cast. Well, there goes Santa Cruz. The day will come when the Coyas will kick us out of our own main square. But I will not see it, because I will already be dead. The Atlantic handover. Well, there goes the UK taking some of that back. How quaint. No luck and no reply. The lazy ringing of the handset, the murmurings outside his house, Denise would not answer. Lot mouthed to curse and cock the dial. Edna could help. She couldn't haul the APCs off the street, but she could arrange for some food to wait out the siege. He would be arrested, he knew that, but they wouldn't harm him for it. Not one of the soldiers outside had held his rank. He had let them know that, and it would take some time to coax a new commander-in-chief from the stolen palace. Lots still had to say. The line cracked to life amid another buzz. Hello, Edna. Are you alright, father? I'm uninjured, but my wards have caught up with me, and Lacerda's men are outside of my house. Are you able to spare food and water? I'll get you food. How are you going to do it without putting yourself in danger? Well, if they're listening to us, you wouldn't want them to know. For a moment, Lot receded to his thoughts. Damn Lacerda and the military and the turncoat soldiers. Damn the rags of cobalt cigarette smoke wafting through his window. But bless her, his brave daughter. Bless her. I'm so proud of you, Edna. So let's try buying backing. Sometimes negotiations require a little extra something sweet to sweeten the pot. A little extra something to sweeten the pot. In exchange for Senator's support, we will ensure a little extra funding goes their way once we are in power. Let's do blackmail for others. As one might expect from a man like Adhemar, he is no stranger to dirty tactics. Bribes offer a win-win situation for everyone involved. However, some bright-eyed senators, blind to how beneficial bribery is for them and fancying themselves as followers of justice, righteousness, and good governance, loudly consider themselves above such immoral dealings. While Adhemar laughs at their manic, delusive acrimony, he prepares an alternative method persuasion, digging up the closeted skeletons of these so-called paragons of virtue and threatening them with a first-rate public airing of dirty laundry. That threat will probably shut up at least 90% of them long enough for Adhemar to seat himself behind the presidential desk. After that, it's done, they're free. Even welcome to whine and yell as much as they damn well please. But all the response they will ever get at that point is, frankly, Senator, I don't give a damn. Look at that. Alright, let's get these divisions added up. We'll merge the tank unit back in. Where are our tanks? They're here, okay. Lacerda smiled. He had finally managed to maneuver the bastard Kubitschek into a position where he had to face him. Kubitschek had mainly refused to get any confrontation with Lacerda or any other member of UDN, but Lacerda had managed to corner him in the Brazilian Congress. Kubitschek couldn't run now, not with a particular session in Congress televised by the press. Lacerda stood up and looked at Kubitschek. It was time to attack. Mr. Kubitschek! You see yourself as being fit for Brazil's leadership, but you're not fit to run a car. Your policies would continue to drive our glorious leadership, our glorious country to ruin. Kupchak looked at Lacerda and slowly stood up. Mr. Lacerda, let me affirm you that I'm a believer in Brazilian democracy and all that it stands for, but unlike you, I believe in building that democracy up. Now's not the time to pointlessly attack each other, but to build up from the foundation that we have. Lacerda sneers. By pointlessly attacking each other, you mean we should instead rush you back to power where you believe you rightfully belong? And you claim to want to build up from the foundation we have. How can we possibly build up when that very foundation is under attack from abroad, while you do nothing to confront the threat? Brazilian people must remain united during this tough time. Your anti-totalitarian crusade will be nothing but a waste of time and resources. Is protecting our value a waste of resources? Unprovoked attacks on our own people is a waste of resources. Kupchak turned to the press watching the debate. Do you think the next leadership of this country should be involving ourselves in a foreign conflict where we have no place to belong? A legitimate successor would protect Brazil. A legitimate successor would build Brazil up. Brazil will find a successor somewhere else. You can hardly see Lacerda anymore. That's kind of funny. Keep an eye on all of this. Can we attack into here? We can. Excellent. Blackmail for others. Let's do Lacerda's speeches. Lacerda is a gifted writer and skilled orator. He has a mastery of words on par with great speakers of the olden days. Pericles, Demosthenes, Abraham Lincoln, so on. Lacerda knows that he will have to put every talent he has to use if he's to win the presidency. Accordingly, he plans to embark on a tour of the country, making speeches at anywhere and everywhere. This will doubtlessly be more than sufficient to convince both the Brazilian public and the Senate in Brasilia that he's the right man for the job and knows what is best for the state and its people. Let's secure support. We're gonna try and encircle these guys over here. Exhale circumnavigated the small chamber, pushing against the recently closed shutters of a small window and bouncing off to circulate the room once more. The small Brazilian flag sticking out amongst the various pens and pencils. The ambassador Jose Jobim turned once more to face his fellow countrymen. So, a code name. The raid went well, I hope. Across the Brazilian ambassador to Paraguay stood a tired man, one with all the manner of debris attached to him. From grass to sprinkles of concrete to even dirt that had seeped through the raid, his outfit from the small reps and holes decorating him. Yes, the raid on the compound controlled by the communists was successful, though barely. It appeared that somehow they were tipped off and ready for us. No matter, though, most of the leadership was killed in the raid. All except Guevara. Rat slipped away. The booms of rifles and weaponry echoed from far away in the city ambiance. Now, I've been wondering about those. It's too sporadic and uncoordinated being reinforcements, but are you sure Guevara is not leading another charge here? Here's another section of the city. They've been engaged in urban warfare, and it makes it harder when the protesters have been clogging up the streets. The military and police defectors from the time of Morgingo are used to handling such rabble, so I do not expect further troubles. The liberals have won. Jose emerged from his chair, facing towards the shuttered window. He closed his eyes and looked throughout the ears. His ears allowed him to hear the faint chants of marchers being nearly overshadowed by the echoing gunfire. But at what cost? That's not an issue. What's really important is that the Argentines are out and democracy is back in. Democracy is not negotiable, my friends. Well, the defeat of the government in the recent Bush war still ringing in everyone's ears. It was inevitable that the anti-fascist full-net coalition would collapse into infighting over the future of Paraguay. After a series of harrowing urban incursions in the capital, the remaining belligerents have laid down their weapons and surrendered to the new authority in Asunción. This would arrive in the form of Alfredo Ramos and the Liberal faction, having finally succeeded in ousting the fascist regime and turning multi-party democracy to the landlocked Latin American nation. With their power consolidated and popular support secured, they are presently working to mend relations with their former rivals in Brazil in the hopes of healing the wounds of the Bush wars, and perhaps secure a democratic defense bloc in the southern cone. Deep in the heart of South America, a torch has been relit. Beautiful. So does that mean... they're in our sphere. We don't have them puppeted. It's probably good enough, though, right? It's very funny to me that Uruguay has more land here than we do. I find that very funny, personally. We also have some claims on all this. Argentina. Well, Chile has some claims on some of this, actually, too. I've been debating checking out the Antarctica content. I don't even think I've got any suggestions for it. Let's get our encirclement off here. On a Tuesday, the Brazilian Institute of Public Opinion Statistics released a poll documenting the popular response to Lacerda's coup. It reads that 91% of Brazilians favored Goulart's inauguration, with only 9% in opposition. When allowed to select a rival candidate for inauguration, instead 71% still favored Goulart. On a Wednesday, stone-faced men in green fatigues shut a printing press in Guanabara and sent its workers home. The building supervisor, a flush-worn socialist in his twilight 60s, secreted the offset cylinder to his house and taped it to the inside of an air vent, hoping that would never become an artifact of his career. On a Thursday, those stone-faced men in green fatigues scoured the streets of Brazil for every copy of the Institute's poll, and by the day's end, smoldering integers and fractions hung over the bellows like the breath of a paternal giant. On a Friday, a few young students asked the staff and newspaper stand for a copy of that poll, and they were all told no, they never had any. Public opinion is clear. There we go. We'll get a nice encirclement off here, and that's going to taper off these guys' ability to do anything. We'll move into Luderitz while we still have time. Actually, no. I think these guys got that. So we have loyalty lockdown. I'm not worried about that. In the meanwhile, the sea of people stood in the plaza at these early hours in the morning, warmed up by the sun's ascent and the performance of the day's star. Carlos Lacerda directed the cloud's restless energy from a makeshift platform adjacent to the plaza. How many days do we have? 38. We're getting there. Let's give us some more support. The assembled crowd's participants were manifold, workers having stopped on their way to their morning shift, pensioners busted by Adhemar to helpfully swell the crowd, journalists dutifully recording the speech, here and there a few soldiers out of the crowds enthusiastically cheering, little chance of the beatnik trash disrupting the day's events. And who is to blame for this crisis? Vultures, fraudsters, felons, the liberals and socialists enter our country to the border of ruin. The desert they have made of Brazil still they call a prosperous republic, of our nation's institutions, those that still stand after a decade of graft are used as a shield against criticism. Is the Brazilian population not entitled to truth, to honesty? A roar of assent from the crowd. Is our republic not entitled to good governance, to its proud place in the concert of nations? Another roar of approval. Lacerda let the thunderous enthusiasm hold for a moment before continuing. My friends, the end of this period of crisis goes through a return of normalcy to politics. There is no hope for the future of a nation but the joint PSP-UDN ticket. As long as I stand, I will continue the fight for our nation's future, but this fight we cannot win alone. There as the crowd's energy reached its highest tide, Lacerda's rhetoric would pivot into its final phase. We need the help of Brazilian workers. We're getting there. Let's do the press offensive. Brazil's senators are ultimately slaves to the will of the public. As a vampire falls down flat when attacked with garlic, so a senator breaks into cold sweat when confronted with a hostile ballot. As such, the most effective means of persuading them is to make clear to the public that there's only one clear choice for the next president of Brazil. Unless, of course, they want the republic to fall to ruin. To ensure that the people are convinced of the necessity of choosing the correct president, Lacerda will reach out to his various press contacts throughout the country and have them engage in a bit of, shall we say, public engagement. Our tank is falling back here. Sverdlovsk is asserting its dominance. Admiral Rainmaker paced about his storeroom. Hold on, I gotta, let's go ahead and get, this going real quick. Do some more industrialization. The whole operation was starting to look like a mistake. The Brilliants had been lucky not to meet any enemy forces in their occupation, but the national logistics made powerful enemies in the Antarctic. Shelter was in short supply, as were shipments of resources. The Americans offered to help, but Rainmaker knew better than to fall for that trap a second time. If he accepted, the Brazilian forces would be made all the more dependent on the U.S. here in Antarctica. They want guarantees, assurances that the Brazilians would open up a second flank against New Swabia whenever the Germans came knocking again. Given the pitiful state of Brazilian forces, the Admiral doubted they could hold for long. With such shortage of supplies and morale, they were barely surviving the weather alone. The winter was fast approaching. No, he needed a backup plan. Retreat home was not an option, but perhaps there was an alternative. Are we not building chassis? I do not think we're building chassis. So main battle tank chassis. Will be this guy. Let's get rectifying that. Given the pitiful state of Brazilian forces, the Admiral doubted they could hold on for long. With such short supplies and morale, they were barely surviving the weather alone, and the winter was fast approaching. No, he needed a backup plan. Retreat home was not an option, but perhaps there was an alternative. He sat back down at his desk and looked over a map of Antarctica. To the east, the large mass of German New Swabia loomed over their paltry territory. But to the west, there was something more manageable. The Argentinian claim, sitting ripe and undefended. Its commander far too concerned with their feud with Chile and quixotic adventures to be able to resist for long. Rainmaker smirked. Leal believed that leading an expedition to South Pole would make up the world respect Argentina's borders. It was almost comically naive to Rainmaker. Fame and glory could do little to protect their claim if push came to shove. Plans were already forming in his head, not a mere exit strategy, but a conquering exodus that would preserve the prestige of his country and career should the wars come to pass. For now, Rainmaker would hold his ground, but who knows what the future will bring. This is actually interesting to me since, I believe Argentina is one of the few, places to have content. And look at that. That encirclement paid off. Magnifico. Let's secure more support. Finally, let's approach the PRP. The integralists of the PRP are rightly considered too risky and or radioactive to approach even at a 10-meter distance under most circumstances. Mind you, they don't help themselves at all. At this unique time, however, they are when the very foundation of the Brazilian state are threatened. They are instead an untapped potential source of support. They're currently weak enough where, with a sufficiently advantageous deal, we will be able to convince them to support us and lend their apparatus to back our candidacy, thus allowing us to push our candidate over the finish line first. There goes Tricky Dick. Well, let's move these tanks forward. Let's see if we can't get them to Windhoek. Get that conquered. Oh. Lera was just made to find himself meeting with that day's visitor. His alliance with Adhemar was embarrassing enough, but had been guessed by every politically savvy Brazilian and their dog. This newest partner, however, Lera would have been delighted to keep distant intermediaries. Sadly, little was ever simple in Brazil. The man opposite to him was some middle-level bureaucrat within the PRP, a man of modest caliber. Long gone over the days where the integralists could claim to hold Brazil's future in their hands. Vargas's downfall and Salgado's failed coup in the 50s had sealed the party's fate. Reduced to one senator and a few members of the House of Deputies, the PRP would soon be consigned to history books. Yet in these historic days, Adhemar insisted that he and Lera look everywhere they could for any edge in the fight with Kubitschek and Goulart. Thus, Vidian's leader had found himself plunged into old ties with PRP. The PRP's offer of support was enthusiastic. The Integralists would support Adhemar and Lera. Their price, however, was non-negotiable. Beyond the shame of being publicly associated with the PRP's fascist mummies, Adhemar and Lera would need to guarantee that upon victory, the exile of Plinio Salgado would be reversed. The Integralists-in-chief would be allowed to come home. Lera sighed internally. The PRP's envoy was adamant. Having to deal with Adhemar's post-victory would be painful. Having Salgado mucking around would be even more disagreeable. But perhaps better to deal with a new problem later than risk losing right there and then. Salgado can continue to wallow in self-pity in Iberia. Because now it's now or never. Time's running out. There are only a few days left before the 100 Days Crisis comes to an end. Slivia Proton's military goons go through with their threat. At this point, ideology is thrown out the window in favor of pragmatic decision, and avoiding the disaster that would be a military intervention is of the highest priority. To that end, previously undecided senators are beginning to coalesce behind the leading candidate, despite whatever disagreements that you might have with that individual. One can only hope that this show of democratic unity and prudence will be able to produce a definitive result before the nearly empty hourglass runs dry. Well, you have 17 days left. We're at the edge right now of making it. I wonder if turning down that deal is going to be fatal. If it is... But it's not. Today was Adhemar de Barros' hour. The 100 days had come to an end. His gambit had succeeded. The Crow had been outflanked, outmaneuvered, and the Crow had been outmaneuvered, and the Gatulas had been outflanked. Now at last, thanks be to God and his mother, Adhemar was free to practice his unique and effective form of governance for his betterment and that of the people who supported him, not to mention that of Republicans' people. As Adhemar arrived at the Congreso Nacional, he looked around. 100 supporters, many of them treated with a douse of a hyper-effective drug, Piola HC1, administered through various types of envelope, applauded wildly for him. Adhemar marched past him, and as the crowd applauded and cameras rolled, it was his moment, and by God and the saints, he would savor it. Adhemar de Barros, by the grace of God and the favor of Nossa Senhora de Conceição Aparecida, President of Brazil, entered the Senado chamber. The PSP politicians applauded wildly. Some were even sincere in their applause. There were politicians from a range of parties applauded out of respect for the new president, but many had trouble hiding their bemusement. How the hell had he pulled it off? Democracy survives. So we get false dawn, corruption modifiers, increase in the progressistas. And there he is, Adhemar de Barros. For now, I'm gonna refrain on reading any of this stuff until the next video. But just taking a look at this tree real quick. A lot of popularity increasing stuff. Good stuff all around. Alright, so here we go. The Dark Horse rises. Surprising and concern of countless Brazilians and some particularly educated foreigners, Adhemar de Barros, the Bull of Sao Paulo, has emerged from the 100 Days crisis as President of the Republic of Brazil. Of the available candidates, he was always the dark horse. This is reflected by the fact that every pundit, journalist, political gambler, expert, and other intellectuals united in saying that the odds of his winning out were near to zero. Adhemar, laughing in all of their faces, has instead taken power and is now lieutenant of the Palacio do Planalto. But as he walks into his new home to take over from his predecessor, he realizes just how weak his grasp on power is. He's going to have his work cut out for him if he wants to stay around. Oh, this is cool. I'm going to wait until next video to fully go over the Adhemar art stuff. In the meanwhile, here they are, the progressistas. In truth, the only thing that unites with so-called... I'm going to wait for next time for that. But... how much do we have in the slush fund? 5 million. This information. Largely forgettable. Okay. Oh, that's cool. Well, let's pay off some loyal officers. The nepotism is brutal, but... what are we going to do? I know what we're going to do. Take over Windhoek. And yet, the war rages on. Here's our nuclear funding budget. Current progress is 6%. And I'm going to up this as high as we can. A purge. How typical. Let's do a tax hike. Just gonna... oh, okay, this is interesting. An increase of our total slush fund size per month at a cost of 4% of 0.04% of our monthly income. The policy is locked at 100% effectiveness, siphoning $0 million extra funds to add my slush fund at the cost of increasing our deficit. That is funny. That is very funny. And we can't change that. We cannot change that. Okay. That's interesting. Well, we got some new technology to get working towards. Let's do automatic support weapons. Let's get a scientist going. I don't know what any of these mean or really mean for the record. I don't even know if he's doing anything, honestly. I don't know if I just wasted my money. I probably did. Dark Horse rises. Adhemar! Well, let's call them the military. The armed forces of Brazil and their leadership, as one might expect, are annoyed at the current state of Brazilian politics. As is well known, this annoyance of the antics of a incompetent civilian was what set off the 100 Days crisis. They are also fairly annoyed with Adhemar's antics, which to them are absurd. But Adhemar doesn't have time to fall victim to a coup d'etat. He's too busy getting used to all the perks of being the president of Brazil, and also the duties. Sometimes. As such, if a generals and assorted military riffraff need to be fobbed off. Adhemar knows only one method, and is remarkably effective. The old Suborno method, also known as bribery. How magnificent. Let's do it. Salisbury has been taken. Let's get some more military factories. We should probably get some more of those going. We're not doing too well in recent encirclements, but that'll be okay. Meanwhile, alright, this is what we needed. Efficient industrial methods. I don't know how to research that. Oh, wait. I think I might know. Basic mechanization. Yep. This is what it's asking for. We need to get this societal development thing up. Okay. That's going to be a little... I don't know how we're going to be able to get up that high, but... I guess we'll hopefully get there eventually. Maybe. In the meantime, I guess we'll just kind of start twiddling our thumbs. Start researching thumb twiddling. See how well we can twiddle. Get bored enough, see how far we can... Okay, I'm not going to finish that. Just saying, time at the lab gets lonely. I'm gonna shut the fuck up now. That's a terrible fucking joke. This is an outrage! We give politicians 100 days to choose a president, not make a mockery of his country like you're doing. Lot fucked it up with his corruption. Now you think you can be president? Adhemar had his best contrite expression on. He wrung his hand in penitence, listening to the barrage of accusations from assembled military men. When he finally ran out of bile, the new president lifted both hands, palms up. Gentlemen, it was not my intention to injure the nation's honor. The intervention of our armed forces gave our country a new chance at democracy. I thought I would run for office and do my best in this moment of national regeneration. He raised his voice slightly, preempting a new wave of protests. There are big responsibilities. Having done politics at state level, it's time for me to try and aid the entire nation. The armed forces will, of course, be important partners and a source of talent and know-how in the day-to-day affairs of my government. There will, of course, be a tightening of the nation's finances after the wasteful era of the Kubitschek and Law administrations. Now that said, new investments in the Army and its officers' corps are long overdue. It will be a pleasure to work with the nation's defenders in building a better, safer, and more productive future. No attempt to dislodge him from the conversation this time. The officer's emotions had turned to cautious interest. Adhemar could not help but smile mentally at the assembled men's cupidity. All this theater for a few cruceros. Let's do some token wage increases. Now at the bottom of it all, the good men of the Brazilian Armed Forces really just want to provide for themselves and their families, and leave a good legacy behind for their children. Our honorable president is a decent man in his own right, who understands this situation far more than many do and sympathizes with their plight. For this reason, a wage increase for the military must be pushed through for their sake and for that of their families, and also to secure their goodwill for when the President Adhemar needs them in turn. The Boulder Uprising, and yet the war goes on. We can go ahead and get another more mass production units. God damn it. Let's get our industrialization up. Getting some good, moderate industrialization going. Meanwhile, let's put some more effort towards finishing the Amazonian highway. Let's get improved motorized equipment. Oh dear lord. That's not good for the Free French now, is it? Republic of Guinea is doing remarkably well, it seems. A man, a corrupting scandal, a long jail sentence, a friend of the president. Adhemar has read the letter a few times already. A member of his association in Sao Paulo had been busted for corruption. Sadly, the man had been less adept at covering his tracks than Adhemar. Thankfully, the man had kept his connection to the president and the resulting pile of evidence secret. Adhemar mild loyalty, but how to help the poor, unfortunate man? Leaving the man to fend for himself was an option, especially in his electoral year. But the thought of abandoning his associates to long jail sentences made the president distraught. Pardoning him, on the other hand, would signal to friends and foes that no one messed with the president's own without a damn good reason. Scandal rags might speculate on the president's corruption, but what did he care? Everyone already knew. The final alternative was to pull some strings and have the police release him out of trial. This would raise some eyebrows, but less than moving out in the open to free him. Perhaps here, as in all things, the golden mean would hold true. Let's get the police to drop the case. Yeah, quite a nice slush fund picked up already. Forgettable legacy, unfortunately, but we'll get there. Oh, there goes Jackie. Well, Jack Kennedy, not Jack, Jackie, his wife. Although she could have been shot too. Democracy survives, is gone. Feels bad. These guys are kind of dicking around. Let's get them moved into here. Tank, go, go, go. There we are. Next, let's go and get some extra military funding going. Sure, we've raised a wage for military officials, but that does not go far enough. We must also try to show the military itself some love, so that they will leave us alone for longer. To that end, let us set aside more funding for the armed forces, so they can afford to work on their pet projects, such as their new, strange, and wonderful guns, their fancy new boats, and the fast and novel aircraft designs. God willing, they will work out like a crying child that calms down when given a toy, keeping them distracted, preventing them from trying to throw the president's fledgling government down. There we go. We got a nice encirclement going. Ah! Oh, just got excited. Is that the, where goes me, yeah, that is the highway. Okay, so we can boost that. Interesting. Let's fund some congressional campaigns right now. Oh, there goes East Africa. A mug of German beer. President Adhemar de Barros glimpsed his reflection on the smooth beverage, the evening lit by a full moon. Why did he come there exactly? Delicious food, sons and daughters of European immigrants, German beer, Italian wine. Elector was invited for drinks wherever he went, his two bodyguards trailing him crow-like in their dark suits. They had reminded the president of Huning and Mugen. Or had it been the other way around? There had been plans of campaigning, outreach to German Brazilians and Italian Brazilians, but the good times had overwhelmed President Adhemar. So many dances, so much great food, so many great drinks. After so many rounds, any speech the president would have approximated Janio Quadros' usual level of sobriety. Better to take the evening off. Perhaps the electors would remember him better than he'd remember them. Sometimes it's all you can ask for. I think we'll go ahead, we'll finish up this focus in this video, and then we'll end things there. See if we can get some pushes into here. The emergency session of the Organization of American States had just entered its fifth hour. Fatigue was beginning to show on the faces of the delegates. Leaders and representatives from every corner of the Americas gathered in Washington, D.C. to decide whether Argentina would be admitted to the OAS. Araujo Castro, Brazilian representative to the OAS, tugged at the collar of his shirt. The room was filled with cigarette smoke. The coffee had long since gone stale, and sweat dampened the shirt on every delegate's back. Cases for and against Argentina's administration or admission had flown back and forth all afternoon, culminating in the address of Chilean Ambassador Enrique Villarroel. Esteemed delegates, in 1958 we met in this very room to condemn the heinous, duplicitous, cynical attacks by Argentina against my country. Indeed, I see many of the same faces here today. How can we even entertain the thought of admitting these rogues, these bandits, to a rules-based body such as this? The imperialist aggression of Argentina was not sated by the blood spilt during the Snipe War. They continually harassed our personnel in our sovereign Antarctic waters. They violated our territorial waters with their warships and vicious whalers. He paused for breath, and every trained orator in the room knew the height of his speech had come. Villarroel gestured to his right, and his fellow ambassador, Marcial Miranda, rose to join him. With the deliberation of a grave digger, Miranda placed a series of large photographs on a stand for all to see. Gas filled the room. These are photos of our outposts on Wincay and Adelaide Islands, of our compatriots murdered in cold blood, tossed into the frozen sea or burnt black in their habitats. How can this assembly admit these monsters into our ranks? The moment of the vote came, and Castro's planned, but with extreme reluctance and shame, abstained on the part of Brazil, ensuring Argentina's admission, albeit on a non-voting probationary basis. They could always be removed later, Castro repeated to himself. A small comfort to the dead of Adelaide. An emergency meeting session of the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C., starting geopolitical upstate to take place. The OS, in a split vote, decided by the surprising abstention of Brazil, has resulted in the admission of Argentina to the body on a probationary non-voting basis. The vote had proven extremely contentious within the Assembly, especially in light of an impassioned speech by Chilean ambassadors, culminating in the shocking revelation of Argentinian attacks on the Antarctic islands of Winca and Adelaide. Observers suggested the long arm of Washington was at work in engineering Brazil's acquiescence to its rivals, including the OAS. Just hold your nose and pretend it doesn't stink. Let's schedule an inspection. The nepotism is high. Like, it's far too high right now. Well, we got that extra military funding. And next we'll get working on dining with the generals. Having thrown money at both the military and its officers in order to shut them up, it seems that they have taken the hint and calmed down. It's not enough to Adhemar's view. He now believes that he has to build personal connections with prominent members of the military. Accordingly, Adhemar will call on some of the more prominent and malleable generals and officers of the Brazilian armed forces, such as Amari Cruel and Ernesto Geisel, and try to build close personal relationships with them. Hopefully such connections will help make them loyal, if not to the constitutional order, then at least to Adhemar de Barros personally. I'm very curious to see how this is going to turn out, but we're going to have to wait until next time to find out, my friends. But thanks always for watching. If you like, so you leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you have any comments, feedback, leave in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get, and I do appreciate any of you who might have for me. The sub button and the notification bell to keep up to date with these videos as they come out. Hit the like button if you liked it. If you liked it, dislike if you didn't. Leaving comments, feedback down in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get, and I do appreciate any feedback you might have for me. I think that's gonna be it for now, my friends. I thank you all for watching. My name has been Mr. Dogbot333. I thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye now.